Vahrin's Call is a single-player action RPG I've had my eye on ever since I first saw it in my timeline, and I'm not exactly sure what it was that drew me into this game. It might have been the chunky art style that they chose to go with, because I used to play a ton of World of Warcraft back in the day, and this art style kind of reminds me of that, and is still very appealing to me. Or it could have been some of the stuff that they've mentioned in their videos where they talk about how you're going to be able to build your character the way that you want and really come up with your own playstyle. That type of stuff is always something that appeals to me, but for one reason or another, whenever I saw a video about Vahrin's Call, something told me like I really need to check out this game. I have a really good feeling about it. And so recently, Titan Rock, the people behind the development of Vahrin's Call, sent me over a code so that I could check out the game and tell you guys my opinions on it. And a strange thing actually happened. When I first started playing the game, I really didn't get into it that much. I was actually surprised. I was like, oh, I don't know if I actually like this all that much. The combat feels fairly basic, the story feels pretty linear, and it actually feels fairly easy. Like, I don't know, there's something here, but I'm not really clicking with it all that much. But I decided, let's keep it going. Let's push a little bit more and see how we feel in a couple of more hours. And then yesterday and the day before, I was actually up until 3 in the morning playing the damn thing. So suffice it to say, it's definitely got its hooks firmly attached in me, and I want to be playing it a whole lot more. Now, one of the things that I did do is I stayed away from most major story beats, because what I really wanted to learn about is the gameplay loop. I wanted to learn about like what the gameplay structure is and all of that good stuff, and I wanted to save most of the story content to experience on stream with you guys. But even still, at this point in time, I've put about 15 hours into the game, which is interesting because if you go to the FAQ on the official website, they actually say that the average playthrough of Vahrin's Call is 15 to 30 hours. And the reason why that's so funny is because I've played it for 15 hours and I haven't even completed the first chapter of the game. Because I was mostly focusing on learning and doing side quests and all of that good stuff, but I still have a lot of things to report on when it comes to what you guys can expect from Vahrin's Call. Now, in terms of story, obviously I'm not going to be commenting too much on that. I can give you guys the basics, which is your character is a mercenary. He came to Vahrin's Vale, which is a part of the Forsaken Realms. It's Forsaken, right? I always get these confused if it's Forsaken or Forgotten. It's Forsaken Realms. And the Forsaken Realms appears to be a type of like universe that Titan Rock is creating. And I believe that they're likely going to be making more games in this universe. This is just the first one. But I'm not sure of that. I didn't hear that anywhere. It's just like the logical conclusion, because they're like, this is part of the Forsaken Realms, and this is just the first story, Vahrin's Call, and yada, yada, yada. But anyway, Vahrin's Call is because you are basically not really summoned, but you're a mercenary looking for glory and gold, and you go to Vahrin's Vale, which is a place that was plagued by this conflict that happened when a race of insect-like creatures just popped up from the ground, and then all of the armies of the land banded together to fight against them, but now everything is like in a state of complete chaos, and there's power struggles everywhere, and there's still some remnants of the insects laying about and whatnot, and that gives you kind of like the perfect set piece for an RPG where you're a mercenary and you're just like trying to make a name for yourself, and you go on quests and do all of that good stuff. Now, the gameplay footage you guys are watching is from a very early zone, which is called the Aeternite Mine, and that's mostly going to be the footage that I'm going to be showing, because I want to leave a lot of it for you guys to discover, because one of the most rewarding aspects of Vahrin's Call I found is its exploration. And we're going to be talking about that more a little bit further in the video, but before we go any more forward, I wanted to point out that this is a game that is being developed by 7 people. There's 7 people working on this game. There's 7 developers, which I was very surprised by. The engine that they're using is Unreal Engine 4. Thank God they're not using Unreal Engine 5, so this should be fairly stable. Like, I didn't really have any performance issues or anything like that. The visuals, as you guys can see, are probably going to look a little bit dated, particularly if you're used to, like, your AAA hyper-polished visuals with, like, all the bells and whistles and yada, yada, yada. But as far as I'm concerned, the art style is always more important. So to me, it looks fine. It's not the best looking video game I've ever played, but the art style does carry it, and it allows me to enjoy it to its fullest extent. In terms of animations, they're okay. I'm extremely demanding when it comes to animations, so I really wish that they would be a little bit better, but when you have a team of 7 people, naturally you can't just afford to make the best animations known to man, but they serve their purpose, and combat still feels satisfying once you actually understand it, because combat in this game is not about flashy visuals, it is about the depth of all the actions that you can perform. And again, that's going to be a topic I'm going to be diving a little bit deeper into. But yeah, beyond that, in terms of like sounds and voice acting and all that stuff sounded fine. No real big things to point out. Sometimes I do wish the sounds were a little bit more punchy, but they're good enough for the budget that this team is working with as far as I'm concerned. In terms of the actual game structure, this is not an open world game. This is a zone-based game, so you're going to be loading into different zones, and each of the zones does have almost like open world-ish type of activities, but they don't go too overboard. So most of this game consists of you taking on quests. You'll always have like a main quest that's kind of like the main driving factor that's kind of like pushing you forward, and then there's going to be a bunch of side quests that you're going to organically run into. Usually I do the whole Roomba thing, so I'm just going through these zones trying to pick up as many side quests as I possibly can and doing those. But you know, it's going to depend on the type of player that you are. If you're somebody that does the critical path, then you're going to be able to get through it faster. There's going to be, you know, just your main story campaign type stuff. If you're somebody like me that likes really exploring and going about through the world, then it's going to take you a little bit longer and you're going to have a lot of side quests to do. But when it comes to the objectives that you're going to be having on these zones that you're jumping into, there are these genome things, which are basically these hidden gnomes that they're basically everywhere. And every time you're close to one, you're going to hear it laugh. So these are just gnome statues and they want you to break them. They want you to break them all. There's actually a quest that you get very early on where they're like, destroy all the gnomies or whatever. So you're going to be finding these throughout all the zones. Whenever you hear them laughing, you're like, okay, that's the cue. I got to go. There's a gnomie somewhere around here. I got to go find it. Beyond that, there's always chests, and then there's skill books. And this is the really important part. And this is where exploration really does become very rewarding. You do want to pick up as many of these skill books as you can possibly find, and you do want to go out of your way to find these skill books, because a lot of these are actually going to dictate how you're going to build your character. So exploration is a main part of Vahrin's Call. To give you guys an idea, the way that I started playing my character, and this to me is like the biggest selling point of the game, because this is a classless RPG. So your character is going to be leveling up depending on the actions that you take. So if you're somebody that you want to play with, like, say, a greatsword, you're going to pick up a greatsword, you're going to swing it a bunch of times, kill as many people as you can, and your character is going to be leveling up the greatsword skill. And as he levels up the greatsword skill, he's going to unlock a couple of passive skills, but you're also going to be picking up these skill books, and the skill books are going to have, like, the special attacks for the greatsword, and those will consume your stamina. This game has your standard health, stamina, and mana systems, but the stamina does not get used when you are attacking. Stamina is only used for defensive actions like running away, dodging, or blocking. So that's when you're actually using your stamina, or in the case of some like special attacks, like special melee attacks, those will also consume stamina. Stamina regenerates fairly fast, but whenever you're doing just like regular attacks, you don't actually expend stamina. So think of stamina more like a skill usage type of resource and defensive resource, but offensively you can just keep swinging whenever you want. But as I was saying, like, one of the biggest selling points for this game for me has most definitely been the fact that it is a classless system. So the more you use a certain type of thing that you want to do, the more it levels up, the more you become better at doing that thing. So for instance, you want to be better at using heavy armor, take hits while using said heavy armor. So if you're a really good player and you're dodging everything, you're not really going to need to level up your armor skill, and it doesn't really get leveled up all that much. If you're like me and you're just like blocking everything, then you're also going to be leveling up your skill with sword and shield. And it's not just sword and shield, because even though it says sword and shield, you can also have one-handed axes and one-handed hammers. And I know that a lot of people don't care about that. I do a lot. It's very important to me, because wielding a sword should be very different from wielding an axe or wielding a hammer. And I do believe that in this game, There's a particular difference when it comes to crushing damage versus slashing damage, but I haven't really gotten enough testing time in. Like I said, I'm about a little bit over 15 hours into it or so, but we're going to be getting down to the bottom of that a little bit further ahead. But now, you being a classless character and things basically leveling up the more you use them really allows you to develop quite the unique playstyle. So when I started playing the game, and the reason why things felt very basic is naturally I was attracted to sword and board. I want to be doing sword and board, so I was just like blocking, slashing, yada, yada, yada. Then eventually I come upon a boss, and I'm like, oh, this is actually being really, really hard. Like, I'm struggling with this. I was also playing on the hardest difficulty, and then I bumped it down by one because I felt like the hardest difficulty was potentially maybe a little bit too spongy for my playstyle, but whatever. So I bumped it down one difficulty, and then I kept going. It still was feeling very challenging, and that's when I started going like, okay, let's use some of these other tools that we have here. Like, they give you Fireball to start, and I was like, oh, if I shoot a Fireball, then enemies go on fire. I was like, oh, I like that. I like that they go on fire because then they're taking additional damage. So I started using that, and it was a mix of like putting enemies on fire and then slashing at them. And then a little bit later, I unlocked something which was called Ice Sword. This was a skill book that I picked up, and I was like, huh, Ice Sword. So you enchant your weapon with ice. This also works for bows, by the way. So whenever you do your enchant weapon with ice, your bow also now shoots ice arrows. I was like, oh, I like that. So you hit enemies with ice attacks, they get slowed down, makes them much easier to deal with. So I'd be like, oh, okay, then I'm going to freeze you guys now, and I'm going to start killing you. Then I started getting to even harder bosses, and I had picked up somewhere along the way a trap, because this playstyle, the amount of playstyles that you have in this game is actually completely insane. So to give you an idea, there's a skill tree for bows, sword and board, dual wielding, great swords, great axes and hammers. There's an armor skill tree, which, like I said, you take hits. There's a special, not really skill tree, but like a skill gauge that gives you different passive skills. There's one for elemental magic, so fire magic, ice magic, earth magic, and then alteration magic, which I believe is also where you get your heals from, but I haven't really gotten a heal yet. The first one that I got was like a dot type thing for alteration. Then there's Alchemy, which that's its whole thing. We're going to be talking more about that as well. And then there's traps, which is the thing that I was talking about. So I picked up these traps, which were, it just said poison traps. So I wasn't exactly sure what it was. And I was like, oh, okay. So I go up to the monster, and I just like start dropping these pots. And it's just a pot that goes on the ground. Then when the monsters go over them, they get poisoned. And I think that poison might be a little bit overpowered. They might want to consider nerfing that, because I'm just poisoning everything. The moment I get that, I'm like, oh, I'll just poison this, poison that. I'm basically going up. My build for a while was, my build was essentially going up the monsters, the toughest ones, and just be like, oh, I'm going to put the poison thing here, and then I'm going to hold block. And they would run over the poison, and they would slowly die from poison as I'm just like blocking and throwing in the occasional slash. Then eventually I unlock barbed arrows for the bow. So now I'm like, oh, okay, so now I'm shooting barbed arrows. And by the way, in terms of like consumables and these traps and all of these things, and even like your healing potions and all of that, these are all things that recover over time, which is really cool because, having to constantly forage for materials, or having like, okay, I need to stop like at a bonfire or something and respawn all the enemies to get like my stuff back, it gets boring. So I really like the fact that you don't really have to worry too much about shooting arrows. Shoot as many arrows as you want. Just keep shooting them until the end of times. And so barbed arrows is the same thing, but barbed arrows has like a limit of them. I think it's like 5 or something that you can shoot early on, and then maybe it gets upgraded or something like that. But barbed arrows made enemies bleed. So as you can imagine, now you're like, oh, so you stacked poison with bleeding. Yeah, I was running up to enemies. Well, I wasn't even running up to them at this point. I would drop like a poison thing, then I would shoot a barbed arrow, and then they'd be bleeding, coming at me, go through the poison. Now they're bleeding and poison. And if I wanted to, on top of that, I could shoot like a fireball, or something along those lines. But most of the times I'd be like, ice weapons, so that when they get to me, I freeze them. And then, you start developing this crazy playstyle that actually uses all the tools that the system has. And you'd be like, oh, okay, so at a certain point you established your playstyle and things get locked in. No, you can change the skills whenever you want. which is really cool because, like, let's say, oh, I actually found a new playstyle that I like more. Okay, you can just unequip skills from other playstyles and start equipping skills on the playstyle that you're actually enjoying more right now, which is really, really fun and promotes tons of experimentation. So like I told you, I started with basic sword and board. Then we went to like spell sword type of thing where I was slashing and throwing fireballs. Then we went to a more trapper hunter playstyle of shooting barbed arrows and putting poison stuff in the ground. And then last night I found a spell which is a special earth shield that you get. So it's like a bunch of rocks orbiting around you, and then when enemies come in control range of that, they just start taking damage from the rocks hitting them, and then you can melee them at the same time. And I was like, this is even better. And the cool thing is, because the way the game works, it's fairly easy for you to obtain materials that you can then like scavenge for upgrading stuff and whatnot, so you can change your mind whenever you want. I just grab a bunch of materials, scavenge them, go up to the alchemy place, and I'm like, oh, let's upgrade the earth shield because I really like that. Now my earth shield is dealing way more damage, and I'm just like going through and using earth shield, and now I have a fire sword enchant as well. So now the playstyle is going back to sword, spell sword with flaming sword, an earthen shield of rocks orbiting around me, and I'm slashing people down. And just that evolution in all of these different playstyles that we did, and bear in mind, I can still mix everything up together again, so I can still put down the traps for poison. As a matter of fact, you're probably seeing me do this in the gameplay footage that I have going on in this video, that I'm constantly going to the wheel and changing stuff around and using different spells and whatnot. And it just feels very satisfying. Like, that's when, like I said, the day before yesterday was when things really started clicking, was when I stayed up until like 3 in the morning, because I'm like, oh, I can drop these traps now. And then yesterday was the day that I got like the earth shield. I'm like, oh, now I have this earth shield thing, and I can do the fire sword, and I can attack people like that. And I'm not even using a sword, I'm using a mace, because it has crushing damage, that I believe crushing damage has more stagger value for when you're attacking enemies. Could be wrong there, not 100% sure. And this is before we even talk about combos that I started unlocking. Because initially, your R1 attacks, because this is very much almost similar to Dark Souls type of control style. The main difference is that you use left bumper for your ability. And your ability is basically anything that you equip on the weapon wheel. So it can be your fire sword, it can be your, earthen shield thing. That's actually something that they could improve, like maybe have a way where you could do multiple abilities at once. Not exactly sure how that would... I mean, actually, I do know exactly how that could work. You could hold L1 as a modifier, and then you could hold one of the faceplate buttons to do 4 different abilities that you have pre-equipped. That would be a better way of doing it. But the way that you do it right now is you actually have to hold D-pad, a weapon wheel type thing pops up, you select the thing that you want to do, then you press left bumper, and that is kind of a disadvantage because whenever you want to heal, you likely will see that I have to like switch between, casting spells and a healing potion so that I can heal midway through combat, and that gets sometimes a little bit hectic. I wish there was, more ways to use those things, but for now, it'll do because it's still tremendously fun to go and engage in all of these different play styles and try to figure stuff out, because the exploration itself is also very enjoyable and incredibly rewarding because you're getting new skills all the time and you're coming up with these different play styles all the time. And you're like, oh, now I have this shield thing. Now I have this, because like somebody else playing the game could have taken a completely different route from me. They could have focused on fire magic and just being a spellcaster, because the fact that I'm using all the armor that I'm using also means that my rolls are worse. So if my rolling is worse, it might make it harder for somebody to consistently cast spells because enemies are going to be able to close the gap. And when they close the gap, they will just mess you up. That's just the way that it goes. But if you want to, you can be a spell sword dual wielder. You can be a spell sword using a great hammer. Hell, you don't even have to use a melee weapon. You can just be a spell sword and then use a bow, or just be a spellcaster if you prefer. Because this is where the other system comes in. Because one of the things that you'll notice, because I only learned this last night, you'll notice that every now and then, whenever I heal, I'm drinking like 5 potions. That's because I never bothered upgrading my potion because I didn't know that there was this whole alchemy system behind potions. So I had these side quests that actually required me to craft potions, and I was trying to figure out, how do I craft potions? I don't understand. And there's in the Alchemist, there's like this cauldron that you can go to craft potions. So last night I go there, and I'm looking at this, and I'm just like, what? So the way that you can craft potions, at least currently for the level that I was in the game, is you have like 7 points that you can allocate. And when you're crafting a potion, you put those points wherever you want. There's just like a ton of stats that you can put into a potion, like, for instance, heat resistance, cold resistance, replenish stamina, replenish focus, replenish health. And then you choose how much of those stats you put to each thing. So let's say, for instance, you could have a potion that not only heals you, but at the same time makes your stamina regen, or it heals you and instantly replenishes your stamina instead. Or you can make like a traditional Diablo rejuvenation potion, which heals you and heals your mana. Or you can make a regen potion instead of a healing potion. Or you could do what I did, which is I put 5 points into recovering health and 2 points into regenerating health. So not only it recovers my health at like 250 health or whatever, but it also makes my health regen after I use a potion, which is really cool. And you can craft as many of these potions as you want so long as you have materials for them, which is just insane that I only discovered this system yesterday, and I was going through and I was like, this is crazy. The amount of stuff that you can do with these potions is insane. So I thought that was really cool. You can also upgrade pretty much everything in the game. So like you're upgrading your spells if you want to using these same materials. You're upgrading your weapons, you're upgrading your shield, you're upgrading your armor. You have access to upgrade everything. And the materials are constantly respawning. So like you leave an area, you jump back in, and a lot of the respawnable materials, because the one thing that doesn't respawn is chests. Chests are limited. You pick them up once, that's it. Chest is done. But everything else, so like crates, satchels, stuff like that, that's spread throughout the world, those just kind of respawn whenever you enter a new zone. So you can just go around and farm materials if you want to. Probably one of the reasons why I've spent like so many hours and I have so many materials, because I was running around trying to figure out side quests. Because that's another really cool thing when it comes to side quests. They don't really hold your hand. As a matter of fact, even in the main quest, they don't really hold your hand. They tell you, hey, this quest, it takes place in this area. And then they give you like, you have to go west and you'll find the person. Like, for instance, for the quest that I had to go to the Aethernight Mines, they just said, oh yeah, go to South Vale, go west. There's a manor there. You're going to encounter the person you got to speak to. So you don't really get a marker in the map. There will be markers that show up in the map after you picked up a chest or you killed a gnome or whatever. But there are no quest markers on the map that I can tell, at least. They're just like, hey, look, in this zone, go west. Figure it out. There's going to be a person there. You figure it out, brother. You know. And most of them are fairly easy to interpret from what I can see. I've actually gotten confused yesterday because they asked me to make a replenish stamina potion, and I couldn't give that to the person I was supposed to give it to. I probably have to try and figure out that one a little bit better. But for the most part, the quests are easy to understand so long as you read them and you understand what you're meant to do. But they don't really hold your hand and be like, oh, here's like this little path thing, and here's a marker that you go here so that you can kind of like AFK while you're playing the game. They expect you to actually be paying some attention to the activities that you're doing, and I find that more old school approach really cool. Now, in terms of its inspiration, which is something that I think is interesting, this is in the FAQ of their website. They actually said what games you draw inspiration from, and they said the Forsaken Realms draws many inspirations. The most influential are probably Fable, The Elder Scrolls, Lord of the Rings, and Warhammer. We wanted to create a brutal, muddy, war-torn world where threats lie around every corner, but one where humanity, humor, and hope can still endure and even thrive. Now, an interesting thing that I find here is when they bring up Fable and the Elder Scrolls, because these are usually games where you have to make decisions as a character, and I'm not sure if that's maybe something that happens later in the story, but from what I've played so far in my 15 hours, there hasn't really been any choice that I've made other than whether I decide to do a side quest or not. But even if I decide not to do the side quest's still there. There's no real consequences. And I don't know if there's going to be consequences later on because, like I said, I'm going to be playing this on stream later. But so far, it's been fairly linear. So that would be the one thing that I would point out I feel is a little bit weird. I expected there to be consequences in this world. But then again, maybe that would be too ambitious since this is only being developed by 7 people. And again, I said at the start that some of the visuals look maybe a little bit dated. This game has been in development since 2014 because, as it turns out, only having 7 people takes a while to get a game done. But I'm really happy with what they've managed to achieve. And I think people should give it a shot if the gameplay that you guys are looking here seems interesting for you alongside the description that I've made of the game. I think it might be worth your time. If you're still on the fence, I'm going to be streaming it here on the channel. You can come over and, ask me questions then. Make sure to subscribe so that you're notified whenever those live streams go live. But for now, that's going to be it. If you guys enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe, bell notification icon, all that jazz, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay strong, stay safe. Peace out.